Hello and welcome once again to another episode of our video series on reptiles, brought to you by myself, Mark Perpetua of Reptile Encounters, in conjunction with Hudson Valley Reptile and Rescue. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about an order or group of reptiles known as squamata, or commonly called the squamates. And squamates are a group of reptiles that is most often seen in the pet trade because squamates are lizards and snakes. Did you know that this is the largest group of reptiles, and together lizards and snakes comprise about 10,000 different species? That's right. In front of you right now is a savanna monitor, a classic lizard. Now, at first glance, most people would have no problem telling a lizard from a snake. Lizards typically have raised heads on a shorter neck. They have tails almost as long as their bodies for most species. There's always exceptions to the rules. And of course, lizards are known for being four-legged and, of course, little claws at the end of their toes. But the other things we'll see that lizards have that snakes typically don't are things like ear openings. On the back of this guy's head, right at the jawline, you'll see a big opening. And when you look in, you'll see a really thin piece of skin. That is the ear opening, and the skin we see is called the tympanum, or the eardrum. Our eardrums are so deep in our canal, we cannot see them. Even doctors need a special tool to look inside. But that's the eardrum right there near the surface. Another thing that most lizards have are eyelids. If you get near his eye and he gets a little nervous, he's going to blink for you. In fact, many times you'll see your pet reptile might actually be sleeping with their mouth closed. But other than that, there are a lot of similarities that reptiles and snakes have with each other than they do with other types of reptiles, which is why scientists classify them together in that group, again, called the squamates. In fact, the monitor lizards, the reason we're starting with one of these, is the lineage or group of lizards that have a common ancestry closest to snakes. What that means is somewhere back in time, there was an ancestor that continued to evolve into modern-day modern lizards, but also produced offspring with mutations that eventually evolved into what we now call our snakes. And just take a look at this monitor. The whole time he's been darting his tongue out just like a snake, doing it for the same purpose, bringing scent particles into his mouth to figure out what's in the room using its Jacobson's organ. Yeah, that's right. Lizards and snakes cannot smell with their noses, and that's what that tongue darting is all about. All right, for the other half of the squamates, I got two examples out here for snakes. There are over 3,700 different types of snakes identified by scientists today, meaning that lizards, they were in the number near 6,000. But as we said with the monitor lizard, it was monitor lizard ancestors that also gave rise to some of the earliest snakes. Today, all our snakes are completely legless. But did you know that there are some snakes that still show the remnants? Yeah, the python and the boa family are one of the older, more ancient group of snakes still alive today. And if you look really closely at the back end where the body meets the tail, you will actually see what are called vestigial hind limbs. The word vestigial in biology means a remnant, something left behind from the past. And there's these little tiny claws that stick out right around the backside or cloacal vent, otherwise called an anus, on a boa or a python. Another cool fact is that males retained longer claws. They actually found a secondary use for them. Instead of using them for crawling on, they actually used them to tickle a female during the mating process. It's part of the courtship to convince her to raise her tail and let him mate. It's really kind of crazy to find out that when you dissect a dead python or boa, those little bones are actually connected to what would be a pelvis. So I know what many people are asking, what does that mean? that if a snake had legs, they'd be way back here, making them look kind of silly. Well, that was part of the evolutionary change. They elongated themselves to make themselves be able to move into habitats that lizards couldn't, thick grasses, burrows, and of course, between rocks and further underground. How do you know where the body ends and the tail begins? Well, if you look at most animals, it's right where the legs are, and that's right also where the anus happens to be. So if you can find where snakes go to the bathroom and reproduce, you're going to be able to determine where the body ends and the tail begins, which means snakes are actually long bodies with mostly short tails, depending on the species. A more modern snake with a more highly evolved is a non-venomous snake family called the colubrids. And our example of a colubrid is this corn snake. Both of these pets are also very popular on the pet trade, but corn snakes are still one of my favorites to recommend. Care and really docile attitude. But one of the things we'll notice on a corn snake that makes them more highly evolved is a complete loss not only of the front but of the back legs as well. You're not going to find those vestigial hind limbs or even any remnants of a pelvic bone inside a corn snake. Now that we've been introduced to a lizard and some snakes, it's time for a little test. One of the neat things about the field of zoology, when you study animals, nothing is ever 100%. There's always going to be a few members of every group that have exceptions to the rules. So if you guess this is a snake just because he doesn't have legs, you might be wrong. This is actually a legless lizard. And believe it or not, they actually evolved from a separate ancestor in what's called coevolution. They developed a characteristic of snakes by not having legs, but they still have many other lizard characteristics. The way their jaw works is very similar to a lizard, not the same as a snake. But if you're looking at him from the outside, his are really tiny, but he's got small holes in the back of the head. Those are his ear openings. Snakes do not have ear openings and are deaf to airborne sound. The other thing snakes can't do is blink, and we talked about the eyelids on the monitor lizard. This animal here has eyelids, and, well, if he'd let me get close enough, I might actually be able to get him to blink. One of the really cool things that shows me this is a lizard is that, like many lizards, he's got a shorter body with a long tail. If he had legs, they'd be right here, which means his tail is equally as long as his body. So today we got introduced to what the group squamate's all about, but even got to see that some lizards can resemble snakes but still retain some of their other lizard-like characteristics. Once again, I hope you enjoyed what we had to share with you today. If you have any questions or comments, again, please leave them, and we'll try to make sure we include them in future videos. Thank you again for watching.